So the reason you get sleepy when you've been up for a while is because adenosine is creeping up steadily the longer you've been awake. And a good way to remember this and think about adenosine is to think about caffeine. Caffeine, for most people, except a very small percentage of people, wakes them up. It makes them feel more alert. Caffeine acts as an adenosine antagonist. What that means is that when you ingest caffeine, whether or not it's coffee or soda or tea or in any other form, it binds to the adenosine receptor. Nothing really happens downstream of that receptor. The receptor can't engage the normal cellular functions of making that cell and you feel sleepy. It blocks the sleepy signal. And this is why when that caffeine wears off, adenosine will bind to that receptor, sometimes with even greater what we call affinity, and you feel the crash. You feel especially tired. Some people can't have any caffeine at all or can't have any caffeine past 11 a.m. or else their sleep is totally disrupted. All of this has to do with the relationship between adenosine and these adenosine receptors, genetic variation, things that are very hard to find out except experimentally, meaning each of you needs to decide and figure out for yourselves whether or not you can tolerate caffeine and at what times of day you can tolerate caffeine in order to still fall asleep easily and get good sleep. So adenosine is driving the sleep hunger. So that when adenosine is high, we really want to fall asleep. However, if you've ever pulled an all-nighter, you'll notice something interesting. As morning rolls around, you'll suddenly feel an increase in your energy and alertness again, even though adenosine has been building up for the entire night. Now, why is that? The reason that is because there's a second force which is governing when you sleep and when you're awake. And that force is a so-called circadian force. And inside all of us is a clock that exists in your brain and my brain and the brain of every animal that we're aware of that determines when we want to be sleepy and when we want to be awake. Our sleep and our period of sleepiness tends to be condensed into one block, typically one 6 to 10 hour block. That block of sleep and when it falls within each 24-hour cycle is governed by a number of different things. But the most powerful thing that's governing when you want to be asleep and when you want to be awake is light. And in particular, it's governed by sunlight. Let's start with waking. So regardless of how well you slept at night or whether or not you were up all night, most people tend to wake up sometime around when the sun rises. Maybe not right at sunrise, but within an hour or two or maybe 3 of sunrise. And as we do that, adenosine levels tend to be low if we've been asleep, for reasons that you now understand. And our system generates an internal signal that is in the form of a hormone. The definition of a hormone is it's a substance, a chemical, that's released from one organ in your body that goes and acts on other organs elsewhere in your body, including your nervous system. When you wake up in the morning, you wake up because a particular hormone called cortisol is released from your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands sit right above your kidneys, and there's a little pulse of cortisol. There's also a pulse of some, and when I say a pulse, I just mean the release of a little bit. There's also a pulse of epinephrine, which is adrenaline, from your adrenals and also in your brain, and you feel awake. Now, that pulse of cortisol and adrenaline and epinephrine might come from your alarm clock. It might come from you naturally waking up. But it tends to alert your whole system in your body that it's time to increase your heart rate, it's time to start tensing your muscles, it's time to start moving about. It's very important that that cortisol pulse come early in the day, or at least early in your period of wakefulness. I say that because some people are waking up at 8 p.m. and are sleeping all day. But it's very important that that pulse of cortisol occur early in the day and that it happens all at once. It sort of sets a rising tide of cortisol in your system.
Annotated and summarized. Easy to share with loved ones. The description below the title for this video has these summary points.